This week's episode is brought to you by Manscaped.com. Use promo code WrestlingFuture for 20% off your purchase. Manscaped.com and the Lawnmower 3.0. Your balls will thank you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm Angelo DeCipio, joined as I am weekly by the Happy Haberdasher, the smartest guy in the room. I'm contractually obligated to say that, Dan the Man Sebastiano. Hey, Danny, how you doing?
I'm all right, Angelo. Looking forward to a good conversation.
Danny, I got a good report from Scott Casey. Scott said you held down the fort pretty good in my absence.
Hey, I mean, you just point him in the direction, and he can tell you stories for hours. So that was pretty easy.
Oh, man, Scott, God bless Cowboy Scott Casey. We need more of him. By the way, oh, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, I hope our friend Karen wasn't listening, though. Cowboy had some words to say about Wahoo.
Yeah, and you may as well call that Wahoo McDaniel R-rated, because it pretty much was. It may as well have been X-rated, but you get Karen on there, it will be X-rated. Dan, we got a special show tonight. We are going to take a road that's very less traveled on this show. We're going to go into my past a little bit, and one of the people who represents my past is a gentleman who did very, very well for himself. I'm very proud of him, happy to call him a friend, even though we haven't seen each other in 31 years. And he still looks the same, and I look like his father. This is Jim Fyfe, and let me tell you a little bit about him, Dan. He is widely regarded as an actor, writer, TV host, theater director, acting and presentation coach, and he hails from the great Mecca of Haddonfield, New Jersey.
Nice.
That's true. That's all true.
Yeah, so far.
Most.
Outside of his acting work, his additional works have included the Rockland Country Day School in Congers, New York, where he began in 2003, I believe. He started there as a history teacher before becoming the school's administrative director, later as headmaster, its upper division head, and then finally the operations administration while continuing to teach history. In 2015, he began work alongside television host, Stan's favorite guy, Stephen Colbert, as a producer for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And although no longer an active actor, his past and vast credits include Tanner 88, Young Indiana Jones, The Frighteners with Michael J. Fox, Ghostbusters 2, where he played Scolari Brother Number 1, represented by me, Teen Knight Rider, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV series, the redo of Dark Shadows, where he played Willie Loomis, and very convincingly, by the way. We're going to talk about that a little bit, too. Just a little, because I know you don't want to talk about acting. We'll get on to it. And then my favorite of all Jim Fyfe's credits, because I really liked how they did stuff, was called Buy Me That, a kid's guide to TV advertising. With that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome my old friend, longtime friend of mine. God, I haven't seen him in eons, 35 years probably, Mr. Jim Fyfe. Jim, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Dan, Angelo, great to see you again. Hi, everybody.
Well, I'll tell you what, brother. I called you the Renaissance man on this amazing graphic behind me. You are truly a guy who has redefined himself, reinvented himself. And while a lot of people, Jim, may have given their left testicle or right leg to be an actor, you're a guy who said, you know what? That's enough. Let's get grounded again. And
boy, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I think you're the only person that's ever really just put it that way. And that's absolutely what it was. It was, I just, I had a great ride.
A part of that, Jim, comes from, from knowing the essence of who you are. a person can change a lot of things over time. The one thing they don't really change is the core of who they are.
Yeah.
And, because you're a Jersey guy, you're naturally grounded anyway.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. What, Dan, we're both going to bitch slap you, okay? Why
I
you
was
laughing?
born there too.
And what the hell happened to you, Dan?
Wow.
So let's talk about this journey. Brother, you have had an amazing journey. I should point out that almost immediately after your graduation, you got work.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, you went to college for theater.
Right.
I actually, you don't know this, but I actually saw a couple of your college productions. And right after, I believe, oh my God, what I want to say is, what the hell show was it? Shit.
No, it wasn't that show.
No, it wasn't that one. You had this old-fashioned English pipe. Yeah, it like kind of a Sherlock Holmes pipe.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to remember what play this was. But anyway, it might have been one of your last stage productions that I saw, because right after that, Hollywood called and the movies hit. So, everybody in school knew that you were going to be an actor. You made no bones about it. You wanted to be an actor.
Right.
It's funny though, because you never said you wanted to be a star. You always said, I want to be an actor, along with our friend John Kendall.
Angelo, you're killing it tonight with the insights. This is, I should be writing this stuff down. And this is, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I just wanted to be an actor because I really enjoyed it. And you're absolutely, once again, you have put your finger directly on the truth.
So what was it about acting that was so appealing to you, other than it's a great way to make money and not have to work a regular job?
Yeah, those two things. The third thing is was a great way to meet girls, which is like it really definitely a big part of it. And the third part was for lack of just, if we're really gonna speak truth, it was all spiritual. I felt myself become somebody else, but also at the same time more myself than I'd ever been. That sounds kind of ridiculous when you say it, but that's exactly what it felt like, and I knew I wanted more.
That's interesting that you say that. The journey we take is often spiritual, whether we recognize it, realize it or not. It's an extension really of who we are. I'm going to get more into that, but Dan is a guy who's sitting there. Because I know when he's got a question, he has this look in his eyes. It's just they kind of stare for a minute, and then he's thinking. So I'm going to go to Dan. So go ahead, Dan. Ask your question.
Well, I'm curious, Angelo, when he was doing his introduction to how, your study of history. As a history major myself, and I have friends that are acting as well, history never struck me as something that they were, other than obviously the history of film, that they were really all that interested in. What drew you from acting to study history?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. I never got a degree in history. My college degree is in theater and my master's degree is in education. History was my hobby. So I as happens to you in life, you show up for a thing and they're like, I showed up for a drama teacher job. And they're like, yeah, we no need a drama teacher anymore, but we just need somebody to teach one section of medieval history. And they named some topics. And I was like, well, no, actually, those topics you're talking about are the Renaissance, not the Middle Ages. They were like, you're hired. So I was a terrible student in high school. All I cared about was, Angelo can attest to this, cracking up my friends and trying to impress girls by cracking up my friends and waiting until the next play came along. Math, science, forget it. D minus, F, and the rest of the subjects, whatever grade I happened to get. But I went to college and I had a great history teacher. This guy, Dr. Jim Dow, he's long gone. He was immortal. The guy was incredible. He told it all present tense. He taught it all as happening like right now. So Peter the Great goes to the military, and he says that it was just riveting. And I guess also maturity wise, I was ready. It just grabbed me. And I think growing up Catholic, it's impossible not to have a sense of history too. So there's all that stuff.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dan. Continue.
Well, then let me continue with that. When you were talking about the pulse, and Angelo, I believe the words you used were settle back to reality. Put us in that mindset. I mean, I've obviously looking through your histories. I was a big fan of like the X-Files, and you if I remember correctly, you narrated, or I guess I should say, you did the audiobook for The Outsiders, correct?
Oh, wow. You guys do the deep cuts. This is great. I did do the audiobook of The Outsiders. That is absolutely correct.
Okay, so I mean, you had, like Angela said, a very successful run. What was your, you mentioned Catholic, so no pun intended here, but what was your coming to Jesus moment where you said, I'm done with this?
It really began pretty much the second I moved to Los Angeles, because I was in New York for a long time, and I had a really nice run there, and I did Dark Shadows, but I still lived in New York. And then, I got married, we had a baby, and around 1993, it was like, look, we better go now, or our daughter's going to be too old and in school, blah blah blah. So we went to LA, and boy, I didn't like it there. I didn't like the business. There'd be a weird thing where you would see guys that you knew from New York. And when you're in New York and you're auditioning, you're hanging out, like it's raining out, it's February, it's 32 degrees, and you're all just kind of miserable sitting there in the same audition room. And everybody's just like, it's kind of like workers, you're like, all right. But you go to LA, it's a gambler's town, and it feels like everybody is there, like this job is going to be the one that makes me $1 billion, and that change I would see some of the same guys out there, and they would totally freeze me out. It was like, what is going on? And the answer, I think, is just that the stakes were so high. And that's why I went there. I didn't go there because I loved it. I just thought it was the next step. And even though every year, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I saw that same scenario play out in my own field in Las Vegas, in television and radio. People come there thinking that they're literally going to hit the jackpot.
Sure.
They come in a $70,000 car and they leave in a $200,000 bus. It's a remarkable thing. In the interest of full disclosure, you and I have a mutual friend who followed you out to Los Angeles, who got an awakening quickly and came right back to the East Coast. Our friend Mr. Kendall.
Oh,
and, yeah. He got a wake-up call real quick and just said, time to go home.
It's every day that you're in the business as an actor. And look, I was all in from the time I was 17.
Oh yeah.
And until I was, I don't know, in my early 40s. I was 100% in. But every day you are having to answer the question, you ready for this today again? You ready for this again? Because it's exciting, kind of like I guess internet dating, or it's exciting because the possibilities are so exciting. But I got to a level. So this is a long answer to your short question. I got to a level where it was like, oh, okay, I'm basically making my living, but I do not like the work that I'm getting, and I don't like watching myself in this. I'm not doing anything. I was never, killing anybody or doing anything. I never did anything I'm ashamed of, but it was just like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like there's more inside me than this. That was really just, and it wasn't a moment. It was more like that feeling just sat there. And every year, like I say, I did better and better. Right at the end, I also got hired to write for TV. And that was a shot in the arm, because that was like, oh, this is where the ideas are made up and where the show actually happens. The actors show up. Sorry?
Who was that for?
That was for a talk show with Ken on the Oxygen Network, which was a really small network at that time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, so I would write an opening monologue for her for every episode, and nobody saw it, which was great because like she was actually like still a pretty big star, but I could kind of cut my teeth on writing for somebody pretty well known, and like it wasn't like the Tonight Show or something. It wasn't a huge thing,
Sure.
so it was great. She was great. It was a fantastic experience. So I thought, oh, this is what I'm going to do now, and then. A bunch of other stuff happened, but it did.
You have an incredible body of work behind you, and good work. It's not shoddy stuff. This is good stuff you've done, but there's a lot of it, which means that you had a lot of doors slammed in your face.
Oh, yeah.
You had a lot of rejections. You went to get that much work. If that's the tip of the iceberg, then the work that you had to put into auditions and cold calls and all the rest of that goes on in Hollywood, that must have been just exhausting.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the process of making money in Hollywood when you're when you're eating macaroni out of a can.
Well, by the time I got there, I had done like a bunch of stuff on the East Coast, theater, TV, and even some films. So I had done some stuff. So, I wasn't starting from absolute zero, but I don't think I worked for the first, 8 months that I was out there.
Yeah.
But, this was my job. This was what I did. And also I had a wife and a child, and it's like, dude, you got to get out there and do this. Like, you can't be like, and also really, I don't think there was a Thanksgiving or a Christmas in the 8 years that I lived there where I was not putting on my tux to go out and cater. I just had to do it. My wife went back to graduate school, and it was just like the bills have to get paid. It's just like you got to do it. So it's
people
pressure.
don't understand that. Yeah, Jim. People don't understand that. They see films, with the struggling actor, waiting tables in the restaurant. That's for real. That's real stuff.
Sure,
that actually happens.
Yeah.
Dan, go ahead, pick up on that.
Well, to kind of cycle back to one of the points you were making. Angelo mentioned that before the show, we always end up working at least one comment about wrestling into everything we do. In the wrestling world, there's a term called fantasy booking, where people often look at a product and say, well, I would have had this match or this person. So I'm curious, since we're looking on it in the past, especially as a man of history, if you could fantasy book for me, is there a part, a role, or something that if you had gotten, you would have stayed?
Sure. I was down to the final 10 for Saturday Night Live in 1985.
I
would have taken that job.
Back up there, brother,
Wow.
man. Okay, I don't know this story, and I did some pretty good research on you. I don't know this one.
I can tell you, what I did was in the early 80s, I got out of college. I did start working a little bit, but it was all like low non-union theater mostly. But I was just to work, just to go, just to be there and doing it. And I was temping and stuff like that. So, I just began to, people would say, that funny thing that you did or that character that you did. So I just started putting it together. And at one point I just put it all together and I invited a bunch of people. I said, I'm going to do this thing. I don't know how long it is, and I don't know if it's any good, but I'm just going to do it because I want to do it for supportive people. So I did this thing, and it turned out to be like an hour and a half of material talking about my family and just stupid stuff and characters and stuff. So I kind of had this whole thing. This was in the early 80s when like the stand-up boom was happening, the skinny tie, blazer pushed up, against a brick wall, standing against a brick wall thing. So I was like, I'm just going to go do stand-up because that's what I guess this stuff is that I put together. So I cut out like a few minutes and went and auditioned a couple of clubs, and I started working a little bit. And that was right at the time that I started getting actually paid like theater work. So I was an understudy in a Broadway show, and then I could go do comedy sets at like 11 at night. And so I had some material that I had worked out like in clubs and kind of road tested it before live paying, mostly drunk audiences, which is the best way.
Absolutely.
You really are scoring. So I went and did that.
Vouch for that.
I got an agent from this show, and then like Saturday Night Live was casting, and Lorne Michaels was coming back, and I was like, "Can you get me in?" So they got me in, and this is the truth. I auditioned for Al Franken in his office with his partner, his then partner Tom Davis, and they were coming. And I did my absolute gold material, like the set closer thing. And it was a sweet experience where, you know, there's a lot of, like you said, Angela, there's a lot of no, door slammed in your face and, you know, all kinds of stuff. But like when you see it flip over from no to yes, right in the room because you did something, that is a heady brew.
Oh, absolutely. We should tell people that Al Franken and Tom Davis, in case you recognize the name Al Franken, that's Senator Al Franken, former senator now, Al Franken. Franken and Davis was a comedy team, and they worked together for a long time on Saturday Night Live and in television and film. And it's interesting that Al Franken, of all people, is the guy that you had to do your audition for. It's really
a producer. He was kind of moving up from being one of the writers to being a producer. So
yeah,
anyway, so that was like a whole series of, you know, call back. And then in the end, my agent said to me, "Listen, here's what's going on. This is the final 10. You got to go in 3 times over the next 3 days. They want to hire Anthony Michael Hall for the show. But he wants a boatload of money, and he wants his friend on the show, and he wants this, and he wants that. So they're like, it's either him or you." And I was like, okay. So I go to the final audition, and I walk in the door, and I bump into somebody physically, and it's Anthony Michael Hall. And he's talking about how he's going to be on the show to this girl. And I just thought, well, what the fuck am I doing here? This guy, clearly they have now made their deal, and I'm done. So I literally took myself off into like a corner, like a, you know, away from everybody. And I said, "Look, man, you got a choice. You either leave now, just leave, just walk out. Or if you stay, do this. Fucking do this. This is like, you have put everything into this. Do this now."
Yeah.
Because you don't know. Right. So I go into the room. Okay. And when you audition, it's usually in these big rooms, you know, and there's at the beginning of the process, there's like one person on the other side of the table. And as you go, there's more people on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
So there's everybody on the other side of the table, Lorne Michaels and like all these people. And there's Anthony Michael Hall on the other side of the table watching me audition. So I just thought, fuck this. So I just did it, you know, I just, you know, gave it my all. And then the next day was a taping at NBC, and I gave that 100%. And then I didn't get the gig.
Did he know that you knew?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I was going to say that would have meant for were it me, it would have made for an interesting confrontation.
Well,
God, Danny.
You know, you talk about the fantasy story. You said that was 85,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The 85 SNL was often regarded as the worst season they've ever had because of how bad the cast was.
Yeah.
You know, who knows if you had peeked in, maybe, you know, that 1 or 2 memorable characters.
Sure.
You know,
I also auditioned when I moved to LA that summer. It was August. They were casting the pilot of Friends. And I knew Marta Kaufman and David Crane because I had done a children's theater play that they wrote. Yeah. And so I went in on audition, and Marta Kaufman gave me a big, "Oh my God, it's great to see you." And then I read, and nothing.
Oh my God.
So that would have been a game changer.
Really? Does that rejection, after a while, does it wear on you, or did you just become numb to it? And how do you not take it? I know in the mob, you know, as Dan will tell you, because we just had a mob show, they say it's not personal, it's just business. Well, how do how do you not take it personal, this business?
That's the reason. That's the main reason this is such a difficult life. I mean, because, you know, you look. I mean, in New York, I could get cast as kind of a wider range of things, but out there, you get cast as what you look like to somebody who drives past you in a car going 40 miles an hour. That's what you get cast as.
Interesting thing I heard, Jim, I heard this recently and I shook my head because it's typical, in my mindset, it's typical California thinking. They were casting a film and they were looking for a Danny Trejo type. Well, why not just cast Danny Trejo? Well, why are you looking for a Danny Trejo type? Why don't you, I'm sure he's available. That's where my head is going. Like, if you know what you're looking for, just hire that actor. Like, why is there this type? Explain to people what I'm talking about when I say a type.
Well, I think you know, I mean, a type is just like, what do you look like when somebody glances at you very quickly? Like, you know, like the bouncer in the club, like, or the guy standing there drinking a mug of beer. You know what I mean? You are not going to be in a tuxedo with with a martini. You know, that just, I mean, again, just like never met you before this, just like glance at you. I am going to, you know, I played a wide range of roles in Los Angeles. Nerds with attitude, nerds with serious attitude, and mentally deranged people of various types. That's pretty much it. And my wife used to say, I'd be like, why don't I get more work? She just said, stopped at one point, looked at me. She said, look, there's just something off about the way you look. I'll tell you another one. Is this podcast, this is an R-rated podcast, or what is?
Yes, sir.
There are no language parameters whatsoever.
My first agent in LA, this is like, so you can't write the stuff. He said to me, you know what, son? There's 3 kinds of parts in this town: killers, fuckers, and clowns. And I don't see you killing or fucking anybody.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm gonna get that on a T-shirt. That's great.
Oh, shit, that's classic.
Although, you know, that's funny. Well, then let me ask you something. Going off of what you were just saying, I had a interview a couple months back, and he was telling the story about getting casted in as he tends to play bad guys, and it basically got to the point where the casting agents were telling him, you know, your audition was perfect, but you're just not brown enough, or you don't look terrorist enough. And I'm curious, when I look at your body of work, and obviously you mentioned nerds and the scientists and the geek, and, you know, Jimmy the Geek being a great example of that. You know, how does that go about? Like, if you know the part you're going for is that of nerdy henchman or nerdy sidekick, do you go in straight Revenge of the Nerd style, like, I'm going to be the biggest nerd these guys have ever seen, or do you kind of play it up and go from there?
You mean, did I dress up?
Well, no, I'm saying when you okay, yeah, maybe that's a good way of putting it. Did you intentionally look the part? Maybe grease the hair a little more than usual?
A little. You know, the thing was, it didn't take much. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody's going to put me in a tux with the martini. Right. I am never going to be the next James Bond. You know, look, you get slotted into a thing, and then when you start to be seen in that kind of role, the problem is you're going to get more of that kind of part. It's very difficult for actors to break out of the niche that they get put in, whatever it is, which is why so many actors, when they get some money and some clout, they have production companies, so they can start casting themselves in roles that will stretch them and all that kind of stuff. So that's it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on. And, you know, somebody gets one decent role, all of a sudden now they're a company, you know, and then you'll never hear from them. They're doing independent film. Yeah, you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, that was certainly my plan. Wasn't necessarily to have a company. My plan was to get on a hit show, and then about year 3, start directing, Because, everybody wants to branch out. You know how it is. Singers want to be actors. Actors want to be singers. Comedians want to be like everybody wants to branch out. And certainly nobody wants to just play the same part over and over and over again. Then again, there are people who figure that out and can be at peace with that. God bless. Great.
We have, Jim, we have a friend of this show. Dan and I have a dear friend of this show. His name's Nikita Brezhnikov. He is an actor. He's a full-time actor. His claim to fame is a film called Brush with Danger. But he makes his living in the wrestling business. And he equated the wrestling business very much to the film business, the entertainment aspect of it.
Sure.
And he told Dan and I an interesting story. And Dan, you'll remember the story. He went up for an audition in LA. The woman, casting director, the casting agent was a woman. She says to him, "What kind of acting experience do you have?" So he starts to spout off his professional wrestling credentials. And she looks at him and says, "Well, that's not acting." He says, "Well, I beg to differ. Here's what I do. Can you do this? Go in front of 20, 30,000 people without a script and improvise and have to be right and have to be on your mark every time. Can you take any given situation and improvise it?" You see where I'm going here? It's all improvised. This is the Sylvester Stallone said it best when casting for Paradise Alley. Said these guys are the best improvisational actors you'll ever find because they can take any situation. It's the truth.
Yeah.
And knowing a little bit about improv, and I know you do because we used to do a little bit of that when we were younger.
Sure.
My parents, by the way, still talk about you and John Kendall coming over to the house with those guitars, playing these Mexican, whomever. You ever know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh my God. And my father is 80 and my mother's 85, and they still remember that night.
Wow.
Suffice it to say, it was a very festive Christmas that year.
Tell them I say hello.
I sure will. I absolutely will. So let's talk. There's one of your credentials I mentioned, and I want to find out what this is. A presentation coach. What does a presentation coach do?
Okay, well, what does a presentation coach do? Another thing that I fell into, a young woman who was a former student of mine, was a babysitter for a woman named Susan Cain, who had been an attorney on Wall Street, but then quit that to write. And she had written a book, and she was going to go give this TED Talk in Vancouver, 5,000 people or something like that. And the thing is, her book is about being an introvert.
Yeah.
So it's, this was really a challenging thing for her. So she was in a panic, and she said to my former student, Eliza, who was her babysitter, "I don't know what to do. I need somebody to help me put this thing together. I'm panicking. I got 2 weeks. And do you know anybody?" And she gave her my number. So I started working with Susan, and her TED Talk has been viewed, I don't know, 20 million times or something like that. And her book became a big hit. So this became like a little side hustle for me. I've been teaching full time since about 2003, but then this fell into my lap. And Susan is one of these people who's like constantly referring people to me. Like,
sure,
I didn't have to do anything. So, I did that for a few years. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I got a website and started to go, well, what happens if I push this, And so, I have a website, jimfyfe.com. You can check it out. And I've coached people for TED Talks, presentations, etc. And the thing is that it's just that in our time, if you're going to give a speech, it's not going to generally be like behind a podium with notes. You're expected, like the TED thing is, you got a little, mic dangling by the side of your face, and you're going to have to move through space and make a point and connect with an audience. So, there's the writing aspect of it, but there's also, it is, again, like acting and like wrestling, it is a performance of a kind. And so you got to start to develop those things. So that's what I do. And I do various forms of it, whatever the client needs, just helping people to connect with an audience with their ideas.
It's interesting, when you hear the term presentation coach, you would think to yourself, I would put it this way, I would think to myself, well, if I'm confident enough to stand in front of people and just speak from the heart, why isn't that effective enough? But there's a dynamic that, for example, like what you mentioned, TED Talks. I love the TED Talks, by the way. There's a dynamic that exists in that a lot of the time the people that you're speaking before are jaded, cynical, of alternative belief systems, and trying to reach them on that mutual ground is sometimes very difficult. That's why comedy works at TED Talks, because everybody can relate to laughter.
Sure.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, then going off of that, what you were talking about with the presentation and the demeanor and all, you have to obviously have an eye, not just for what they're going to do, but the person. I mean, tips you would have given her would be different than, say, the tips you would give me. So put us in that mindset. Someone comes to you and says, I need help. I'm going to make a speech, a presentation, whatever. Do they have to audition for you in a sense of like, show me what you got so that I know where we're starting? How does that process work?
Their audition is they call me and they have cash. That's the audition. You're in.
Man's honest.
Yeah, really. I mean, look, it's a side business for me. I've turned some people away, but I've turned them away because I don't feel like I can help them. And really all of their
Jim, go back for just a second. I want to explore that.
Sure.
Explore that. To turn somebody away because you don't think that you can help them, is that based on your lack of confidence in your ability or their lack of teachability?
Neither. I'm actually pretty confident. I try not to be, I don't want to be like a blowhard guy or whatever. But I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't feel like I have something to offer.
Sure. Absolutely.
But no, I turn people away. Like if somebody comes to me and it's like, I have stage fright and I can't even get up and speak, in front of two people or say my name and like I can't really do that because, just the way I structure my costs, I don't, it's not a course. I'm really helping you. It's my motto on my website. You have something to say. I'm here to help you say it. So it's somebody who's coming to me who's already like, I want to communicate this. I'm not there to necessarily help people get over stage fright. So that's the number one thing that people call me about, where I go, go to Toastmasters, because that's really more about get aversion therapy to get you through that. I'm more like a coach, which is like, you got to be ready. You got to really want to say what you have to say.
It's very interesting that we're talking about this because, again, this show, to tie into wrestling, this show has a dear friend named Sal Carenti, who was just on, in fact. Sal actually books speakers for events, and not just wrestling events. He's got a number of Major League Baseball players, football. He handles sports. But the biggest, and for me, and sometimes I just laugh because sports guys, let's be honest, they're sometimes they're not the most articulate people. Interestingly enough, Jim, you'll find this funny. The wrestling community is quite articulate. I'm not even kidding. It's a very articulate community. But when I listen to a football player give a speech or try to give a motivational, I cringe, and sometimes I just got to go like, do one of these. Go ahead, Dan. You know what I'm talking about too.
Oh yeah, no. I hate to say it, but you learn real quick that certain stereotypes, like the dumb jock, tend to filter through certain aspects of society. But let me ask you something then. Since you were talking about the demeanor and the appearance, I'm curious. Angelo was talking, got me thinking. We've had a lot of people on the show, and some of them have had great stories about helping other people's careers. Sometimes it's something as simple as I bumped into somebody on the subway and I was like, you have to come train or whatever. Do you have any stories like that? A friend of yours, anybody you know, where you saw him and you're like, look, if you have never thought about acting or never thought about whatever, go check it out.
Yeah.
I would never, ever, ever recommend that somebody go into acting, ever. I'm
You
not-
know,
Okay.
I was going to ask you
Here's the
about.
thing: if you want to go into it, one of the first, you shouldn't go into it. I mean, you shouldn't go into it unless you really, literally can't do anything else.
Yeah.
That's the way that's the way I see it. And like, there are many people who, like a guy who's a wrestler and could do it as a side thing. It's great, but really, it is as a thing to put all your chips in that on the table.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you everything. My daughter was doing it until like last spring. She's 29, and she was at it for about 7 or 8 years, and it was, I'm so glad she quit. It's
Jim,
a tough.
how do you handle that when your daughter comes to you and says, Pop, give me some advice. I got, I went up for an audition today. I didn't get it. They said that, I was good, but they were looking for this. They were looking for younger. They were looking for older. They were looking for whatever.
Sure.
How do you come to terms with just saying to your child, this is not something that I want for you, or really being honest and saying, this is something I don't think you can handle.
Well, I thought she could handle it. And she
Mhm.
certainly, I was always just really honest with her. She grew up, at all these years in LA that I'm talking about, watching
Yeah.
me go out to auditions with different changes of clothes, eating lunch in my car, brought her with me to some auditions. She saw me going out at Christmas and weekends to go cater and all this stuff. She knew about the life. I mean, I knew nothing about it when I set out,
Yeah.
nothing. But she
Sure.
knew something, and through me, she had a few little connections to kind of get started. But,
Right.
I told her, I was very honest with her. I said, look, you have talent. I think you will work sooner or
Mhm.
later. Question is always going to be, will it be enough financially and emotionally? So
Interesting.
this is it.
Interesting stuff. Dan, you and I
Yes, sir.
can relate to this at different levels. We've seen and interviewed, in fact, offspring of famous wrestlers. We've talked to wrestlers whose kids tried to make it in the business and couldn't or didn't for whatever reason.
Right.
One of the most famous, Jim, is a guy named David Sammartino, who had some big shoes to fill. Because his daddy was a guy named Bruno Sammartino.
I totally remember Bruno Sammartino. Absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, we just had we just celebrated his 85th birthday posthumously.
Sure.
And here you go. Here's a guy whose son was so overshadowed by his father's fame and success
Right.
that there's no way he could have made it. At least, not to say that you're not famous, because you certainly are. If I know who you are, you're famous. Okay, so let's get that straight. But I digress. But here's the thing, though. It's interesting because a lot of people in the business immediately say, I don't want that for my child. The wrestling business, sports, film, television, I go get a normal job, go work in an office, whatever the case. Why is that? Is it the knowledge that what they're going to face?
I think
Or-
so. Yeah, you want better for your kid, and again, look, now she's still in the family business because she became a teacher. But what I see is, even though she's not making a lot of money, right now, I mean, she's just starting out, but like she's not making a lot of money. But what I see is she's getting the emotional benefit of doing something that connects you to other people. When you, like I said about LA back at the beginning of this whole thing, it's like it's a gambler's town, and it's like everybody is there with their chips, and they've got their system or their thing. They're going to break in, and everybody's looking at the horizon and this big thing that's going to happen. And it can be a really cold life, not because people are mean. People are fine, but it is a business. It's a company town. And it's a business. The business wants you or they don't. And really, it isn't personal. It isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Danny.
Well, you talked about it as a job. Teaching is probably one of the greater examples. There's professions where money is never the driving force. There's always some kind of motive or a push for something greater, be it teaching, be it, people who go into the medical field, veterinarians especially. You have, law enforcement, emergency services, people who do jobs because it's fulfilling, even though they'll be, on the one bad break away from being broke for the rest of their lives. Can acting fill that void? And when I think of these, I have friends, like I said, in the business, and they tell stories about, spending years, 3 or 4 of them sleeping on the floor in an apartment for that one play every few months you might get.
Sure.
And they'd never trade it for the world.
Yeah,
like, can acting be that job?
That answers itself. I have friends who are still in it. I have one friend who's still in it who has literally never stopped working, never. And he's also had the good luck to fall in love with a woman from Vancouver, British Columbia. So he can work in Canada, he can work in America, he can even work in England, and he works all the time, and he's happy as a clam. I have another friend who's a guy who's like, dad's, done a bunch of stuff, bunch of like grade C movies, a few TV things. And this guy just loves being in the business and the show business of it all. He loves it. And that's great. That's great. For me, I just ran out of steam with it. And, I felt like there was more in me. I just didn't know what was going to be next.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be writing and producing. And I did do that for a bit. But when I clicked into the classroom, when I had my own classroom, it was a similar moment to the moment where I knew I wanted to be an actor. It was just like, this feels right.
You know what the difference is, Jim?
What's that?
The difference is you're trading your wallet for your heart. You're doing what you love.
Yeah, I guess. And I think the reason maybe I got out of acting was I was having to do it for my wallet. And that was unpleasant.
And absolutely. And I want to, Dan, you were telling your story and and I didn't want to interrupt you because I would never do that to you, Dan. But something clicked in my mind. I remembered a few years ago, Jim, that there was a young guy, a fairly young guy, an actor named Richard Grieco.
Sure.
Yeah, you remember who he is?
Yeah, I did a film with him. Okay.
Now, he's a great looking guy when he was, in better shape. He was recently found, I guess, recently in the last year or two, sleeping in dumpsters. Yeah. There are photos of him, being, taken in by strays and taken in by, you can't even make this stuff up.
Yeah.
There have been a few, and I researched this, Jim. There have been a few like that. Richard Grieco is the recent casualty of the entertainment business. But a lot like wrestling, when they're done with you, they throw you out. You're a flavor of the week for a while, maybe your flavor of the month.
But it's also like, look, you're still a person, and who knows what his family history is of depression or chemical stuff. Like I said, I did a film with him in Bulgaria, a sci-fi channel thing, and super nice guy, gentle, quiet guy, just really great guy. We didn't hang out a lot. I guess I was there 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. Really nice guy. Played fantasy baseball a lot. in his room. But very generous, great guy, and he was like the star of the movie. This was 2003, 2004, something like that.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to hear about that. That's terrible.
Yeah. That's straight up straight shoot. But you know, as I said, you know, he's the most recent casualty. There's this thing about Hollywood, especially old Hollywood, where, and I guess it's more humane now, for lack of a better term, but there was a time when Hollywood was done with you, you know, you were on the marquee one day, you were off the next, and they went on to the next name on the list. How, and I want to talk to you about the psychology of this, because we talk about psychology a lot on this show.
It's interesting.
The psychology of knowing that you were somebody one day and now nobody knows your name. Richard Grieco is a great case of that. Good looking guy, handsome as all get out. He had probably any woman that he wanted. Now he's unrecognizable as the same person that he was. Old Hollywood used to do that. It was like what do they call that, Dan? A mill? Yeah, exactly. And you know, some of the most notable case of that was what's her I guess what's
Judy Garland.
She's one. The woman who they found dead was the Black Dahlia woman.
Black Dahlia, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You mean because she was like a minor actress? She had played the system, you know. I guess she played the casting couch back in the day. They called it the casting couch, you know, trying to bed different producers and directors for parts. And, you know, here they are. I guess whoever was finished with this woman just decided, okay, well, you know, here's another one, another casualty of the business. But there were a lot of them, Jim. You don't hear about them anymore, but I'm sure they still exist. How do you, as a now former actor, reconcile your career with your future? Is there a way to parlay the knowledge from acting into your teaching ability? And do you use acting as a teaching tool? Yes, in the sense that, and let me just say also, this is one of the best interviews I've ever had. You guys ask really great questions.
Well, thank you.
I am very, very, very happy to be talking to you. Thank you. This is just great. I do use my acting in all sorts of ways, but I don't come in dressed up as like, you know, Ben Franklin or anything. What I do know how to do is how to make sure I am running the room. And I also know how to watch eyes. And also that's theater, you know, that's the difference between theater and film. I mean, you see your audience right there in theater.
Oh, yeah.
So I know when I'm connecting and when I'm not. I know when they're checked in and when they're not. So I know that. As I've got more skill as a teacher, I've been able to have other arrows in my quiver, other approaches. So it's not just me talking really, really loud and waving my hands around a lot. Although that's a pretty good default setting.
That's interesting. Go ahead, Dan. You got that look.
No, just you got me thinking. Let me ask you.
I know that look. He's got that thing.
No. You were.
Jimmy, you have to watch his face. His eyes just go blank. Go ahead, Dan.
You were. Well, it's you know, being the smartest guy in any room you walk into is a curse. So sometimes you got to handle it.
I feel for you, Dan. I do.
There's been a lot of stories in recent years about the shift in education. One social media post going around and talks about like ranking the worst people ever, and one of the people on the list is helicopter parents from a teacher's perspective. You know, I'm curious, you as someone who's done in two of the most I don't want to say meat grinder businesses, but you've had the worst of the worst in Hollywood and the modern parent of a student in American education. Can you just for my own curiosity, can you compare
Sure.
like
Well,
the
first
evils
of
there?
all, yeah, I mean, the worst of the worst, like the thing about Hollywood was I don't feel like I had anybody be actively in my face, cruel to me. It's not about that. The business is very pure. It's very pure capitalism. What is your value? What is the value of you that I, as the guy who's got the money, gonna pay to have you in my thing? How can I pay you as little as possible and still have you in my thing if I want you? And so it's not, it's really just more like a huge indifferent machine rather than like actively cruel guys who are coming to my house to kick me in front of my kid or something.
I got to tie into that, Jim, because, and again, Dan, forgive me for interrupting. I'm so unaccustomed to doing that.
Right.
But you said something interesting. What is your value of you?
Right.
That's interesting because my question would have been, what is their value of you?
Well, sure, that's what you're subject to. But I think for people in anywhere in the world, if you don't have a bedrock sense of yourself, a center, then you are going to end up, in bad circumstances when external things don't go right for you. And that said, I think, none of us is far away from that ever, because we can all have bad times. Anyway, so to deal with the helicopter parent thing, it's like, again, I think the acting training comes in because as an actor, the thing you have to do is be somebody else. So you have to imagine what it's like to be somebody else. And the trick is always, everybody is the good guy in the movie they are in. Even the parent who's the helicopter parent coming in to get in your face is in a movie about a heroic parent who's in a system where they don't understand my kid. So they are acting that role. That's what they are doing. And they're coming from love, they're coming from fear. And if you can understand that and not just be reacting to it, you can then respond to it, and begin to get it to a conversation. So generally, again, I think there's a lot of good things that acting training can teach you, if you're attentive to it.
Nice.
Go ahead, Dan. I will allow you another question since I technically interrupted you. Go ahead.
I think this is the least wrestling interview you guys have ever done. It's got to be, right? I mean,
well, no, we actually did. It's funny you should say that because I'm going to divert the conversation for just a moment, Daniel.
Of course.
We did we actually we're having him back this week, by the way. We actually had Jim, and you'll really appreciate this. We had a guy on the show named and he's coming back Thursday night, named Stephen Plym. Now, you probably don't know the name Stephen Plym, but I'm sure you know his client, Tiny Tim. Stephen Plym was the manager of Tiptoe Through the Tulips, Tiny Tim, and has handled a number of Hollywood actors and actresses. He is a dear friend of mine. He's making his, third appearance, Dan? Fourth? Where are we at? 3 or 4 with Steve?
Yes.
Yes, what? 3 or 4?
Nice.
Probably 4 at this point, but he'll probably be back. Anyway, he's an interesting cat because this guy is the quintessential, and tell me if I'm BSing, Dan, he is the quintessential Hollywood agent, manager. He's got the quick gift of gab. He's got the stories. He's got the let's do lunch, baby. My people will call your people. That's how he talks. Wow. That's him for real. Wow. Dan, tell me if I'm BSing, my friend here.
No, if you were to, you say you can't write that. If you were to cast or write a script for a stereotypical agent, that's exactly what I would picture.
Wow. That's Stephen Plym. Wow. We had him on, Jim, because he wrote a book called Tiny Tim and Mr. Plym, where he cataloged Tiny Tim's exploits with women, with the entertainment business. Why would a guy like Tiny Tim? I want your put your showbiz mind on for a minute. Why would a guy like Tiny Tim, who has really no foreseeable or visible appeal, look at that? He's a big guy, 6'4", 6'5", overweight, long, greasy, curly hair, a nose that looks like bigger than mine, and that takes some doing. You know, a guy like this who, on the surface, you would say, what does he have to offer? How does a guy like that make it? Is it the freak factor? Is it the curiosity factor? Or is there some genuine likability to the misfits in entertainment? And then I'm going to give you a couple other examples.
I get what you mean. There's always people around where you're like, why is that person famous? Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly what
If
I'm
I
saying.
knew, I would be Ernest Plym.
Exactly. Exactly. Go ahead, Daniel.
Well, then, keeping with that, as we wind down, then let me ask you this out of curiosity.
We ain't winding anything down till I say we wind it down, brother. I'm the host of the show.
I'm until breakfast.
I'm the one that pays the bills here. Speaking of paying the bills, go ahead, ask your question, then do a message from our sponsor.
Of course. So
Yes.
then, sticking with that, when you talked about sometimes you look at people from an acting standpoint with your history, have you ever worked with anybody or seen somebody where you just can't fathom for any experience you've had how they made it?
Oh, you mean somebody I've worked with directly where I'm like, how is this person even here? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Honestly, nobody comes to mind. And we do live in a litigious country, so I don't want to get sued, even if I can remember somebody. I can't think of, I have seen a few things where it's like, oh, this is one of these things where if you're not in show business, you think show business is like this all the time.
Exactly.
I was on a movie. I had one day on a movie, and the star of this movie, I will not name, but it was a male star who was, still active and still really good, but, several years past his big peak, So he was playing the lead in this film, and, very businesslike. Hi, how you doing? Come in, read the scene. They're deciding where the camera goes. And then he just starts arguing with the director about, my character would never say this. And the director's like, oh. So it escalates and escalates, and we they're screaming at each other, and it's like, whoa, wow, this is like the scenes from All About Eve. But like, again, you're not in show business,
Yes.
you think it's like this all the time, and I had never seen anything like this. So it was a throwdown, and they hustled the rest of the actors out. They're like, yeah, let's go wait over here, guys. So it's like 3 hours later, we shot the rest of the scene with over the shoulder of his body double, because the guy basically quit the scene.
Wow.
So, wow, that was a real like Star Trek like classic thing. Pretty amazing.
Wow. Good, Daniel.
You hear interviews from time to time with certain people who, again, we're not naming any names, but, and 3, 4, 5 different people will come forward. Oh, this guy did this or this guy did that. And it's like, sometimes you hear it and you go, yeah, okay, I believe that. And sometimes it's really surprising. My old line of work, it put me, before all this COVID stuff, put me in involvement in a lot of conventions with, being liaisons and all. And you meet celebrities at conventions. I know conventions can be stressful, but some people are down to earth and you get it. And some people are just flaming assholes. And it's like, okay, that caught me off guard. I would never have guessed that guy's the douche,
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, and maybe this touches on the Tiny Tim thing. It's like, the business, sometimes there are people in show business because it's like they literally can't do anything else, like I said, but it's like, don't actually have like a real talent, they have maybe a look, you know, a definite look, and they luck into something. Luck, like gambling or anything else, it's a huge part of it. It's luck, you know. Something happens, somebody says yes, and then other things happen, or they say no, and other things don't happen. So, you know, it's just sometimes.
Wow. Daniel, how about a word from our sponsor at this point in the show?
Of course, you know, we talked a lot. You said you were talking about taking care of students, taking care of the business in Hollywood. Well, you know, the key to Hollywood, you said you have a look, and if you're going to have a look, there's certain things you gotta have that are just right, and one of those being couple of guys, you know, you got to feel comfortable in your own skin, your own pants, and you can with our friends and our sponsor at manscaped.com. Manscaped.com is the world's leading producer of manscaping products. Currently, their big package deal, the Lawnmower 3.0, which is the best trimmer out there. I use it. I'll vouch for it myself. It comes in a combo package with a deodorant, revitalizing spray, a leather handbag. So you get all that. You can use promo code WrestlingFuture for 20% off. Christmas is coming up, so you got a lot of opportunity there. Manscaped.com and Wrestling Future for 20% off. That's Manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you.
Thank you. And so will we. They love us, Jim. Our sponsors love us.
That's fantastic.
Yes. They let us do whatever we want.
Apparently.
Yes. With no language parameters. Love it.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Right. So, Daniel, my
yes,
dear
sir.
friend, my cohort, my co-host, have you learned anything from the seasoned veteran of the stage and screen tonight?
Oh, without question. I mean, you know, I hope that I was productive in some of the discussion of your past, especially the history side. Always, I mean, me being a history major myself.
You just said something, and I'm going to go there because I thought for sure, young squire, that you were going to expound upon the history aspect of this, but you didn't go. You only barely went there, and I was utterly disappointed.
Oh,
well, I was just a little left flat, but
well, we were kind of in the moment.
You a chance to make up because I'm going to invite Jim back on the show.
Well, there you go. I mean, I figured we were kind of in the moment, and I mean, I think talking past
B1.
Well, what I mean is talking past career. You know, the conversation really didn't steer towards the history side of it, and being a history guy yourself, Jim, you know that there's always that one guy that tries to shoehorn the discussion of history into every conversation.
I am that guy.
So, yeah, me too. And that sometimes you get the understanding when that's
I was
unwelcome.
going to say that, Dan. I'm surprised you didn't do that. I gave you a wide open gap to jump in. And you kind of took a fart on the whole thing, man.
Well, I mean, I went into his interest in history, but it was
bring you a star. Look at this. I bring you a man with credits.
Well, he was, Angelo, if I might, you know, it's understandable. Like millions of people and many, many, many women, Dan is just like, you know, distracted by my charisma.
There you go.
You know, it's
right.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you what, I am going to invite you back. I definitely think this is worth exploring a part 2. I'll tell you what, man, that was a fast hour. Holy crap. Yeah. That was a fast hour.
Yes, sir.
We are going to bring Jim Fyfe back. I will get with Jim either after the show or tomorrow. And Jim, you and I will discuss your best nights to come back. And I want to explore. I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to do the next show with Jim and Dan. We're going to do this.
Okay.
We're going to talk about. Oh, this is a good subject. I want to talk about the history, the psychology of the entertainment business. That's a whole show right there. The psychology of the film and entertainment business. Dan and I have had hours upon hours of conversation about the psychology of wrestling, because that's very much paramount into individual matches. But when when your business is a psychology-oriented business in that it is designed to evoke emotions. And that's what film and television, even stage plays, that's what they're designed to do. Make you laugh, make you cry, make you think, make you respond in some way. It's the theater of the mind. And I think there's a lot more there to explore than we've explored tonight. And I'd love to have you come back and
then
do
in
that
episode 3, we'll get into history, Dan.
Right. Why am I even here?
We can do that because we're bringing Stephen Plym back for number 4.
Fantastic. Okay.
I
Well,
would
this
love-
is great.
you know what? I
The
would
questions
love to
have been
see-
great. Angela, it's been great seeing you and
My
talking with you
pleasure.
guys. Dan, your questions are as thoughtful and impressive as are your mutton chops.
Well, thank
There
you.
you go. Told him this guy's going to give Wolverine a run for his money, brother.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
On behalf of Dan the Man Sebastiano, on behalf of JimFyfe.com, you can find all your Fyfe needs, everything for Fyfe. It's JimFyfe.com. Is it .com, not .org or any?
No,
it's
just
JimFyfe.com. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm giving him the right web address. I am Angelo DeCipio for Wrestling with the Future. Happy wrestling, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thursday night, Stephen Plym. Take care. Bye-bye.